I am Eliza, 35 years old, and I used to believe that if I worked hard, lived by principles, and hurt no one, life would be kind to me. Until that night. The celebration for the year's biggest project was held at the most luxurious hotel in the city. I, the project's finance director, had colleagues patting my shoulder, offering congratulations, raising glasses. I thought, maybe at last it was my turn to be recognized. But then the company's CEO suddenly stepped onto the stage, face stern, holding a microphone. And in front of hundreds of guests, he singled me out and asked me to come up. Eliza Hall is suspended from duty immediately pending an internal investigation into allegations of misappropriating client funds and using illicit substances during work hours. I could not breathe. I had no idea what was happening. Until I looked down into the audience and spotted my sister's face, Madison, who winked and smiled with obvious delight. I stood there while the whole room fell silent, as if everyone believed I was the terrible person the accusation described. Have you ever been stabbed in the back by your own family member just when you thought you were about to reach your greatest achievement? If you have been betrayed by someone in your family, please share your story in the comments. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me to hear how I turned this fall into a counterstrike my whole family never expected. I don't remember how I walked off the stage. Everything around me blurred. Each step felt heavy as if the floor had turned to stone. The looks from colleagues no longer carried the familiar warmth. Some looked down, some whispered to one another as if they had witnessed a dirty scandal, as if I were no longer a person but a sensational headline in the morning's internal bulletin. A security guard in a neat black suit, his eyes cold as steel, stepped beside me and tilted his head to signal without saying a word. I nodded slightly, not wanting to make the situation more humiliating. My heels clicked rhythmically, mixed with the growing murmur behind me. A woman whispered, "Why would she do that?" And a man answered, "I heard she's been addicted for a long time." Who would have thought? I did not turn. I was afraid that if I looked into those familiar faces, I would not be able to stand. The large glass doors opened and a cold night breeze swept in. I stood alone in the lobby, my hands still shaking. Suddenly, a hand touched my shoulder from behind. I turned. Madison was there, wearing a tight red dress, her hair softly curled and gleaming like she had just stepped out of a shampoo commercial. "You okay?" She tilted her head. Concern crept into her expression, but it was fake. I looked straight into her eyes, and before I could speak, Madison leaned in and whispered into my ear so quietly that only I could hear. "It's time for you to step aside." I stood stunned. My chest felt squeezed. She smiled, took a step back, then walked away as if nothing had happened. The shock came not only from the accusation but from the fact that my own sister had chosen the precise moment when I was near the peak of my career to deliver a mortal blow. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my hands shaking so badly I entered my passcode wrong twice. Messages came in rapid succession. "Eliza, what happened?" From an old colleague. "Call me when you're free." From my assistant. But there were other messages that made my skin crawl. "So disappointing, Eliza. I recommended you to a client, never thought." It took less than 10 minutes for the rumor to spread throughout the company. And just 1 hour later, I received the official email from Human Resources, suspended pending investigation. I understood why they had to do that, even if they did not acknowledge or deny the claims. The company has a duty to protect its reputation. I did not blame them. But I couldn't help feeling as if years of effort had been erased by a single lie. I got back to my apartment just before midnight. I sat down on the floor right inside the door, the lights off. The darkness spared me from looking at the photos of me with colleagues on the wall or the certificates still on the shelf. I sat there in silence until my phone rang my mother. "Are you home?" Her voice came, with no greeting, only the cold tone of someone disappointed. I closed my eyes and forced myself to answer in the calmest voice I could. "Yes, I'm home. Madison told me everything. Do you know how your actions affect the family?" I didn't do anything. I tried to keep my voice from breaking. "I didn't embezzle money. I'm not addicted." "Then why would someone make an accusation? Where there's smoke, there's fire, Eliza." I was speechless. Not because my mother doubted me, but because that doubt arrived so quickly, without consideration. All those Years I held myself up as the model child did not weigh as much as one sentence from my sister. I don't need you to believe me. I only want you not to judge before you know the facts. What kind of talk is that? I'm just worried about you. I hung up, not bothering to hear more. I did not want to listen to words cloaked as concern that effectively denied all my efforts. I stood up, went to the kitchen, opened a bottle of water, and stared blankly at the refrigerator light. A family photo from Thanksgiving 3 years ago was still stuck on the fridge. Madison stood in the middle, radiant like a star. I was off to the side, slightly leaning, forcing a smile despite having just finished a long shift that day. In the photo, no one noticed I was exhausted. Just like in real life, no one ever cared. I took the photo down and quietly put it in a drawer. Right then, the phone rang again. Ryan, my brother. Eliza, I heard from Mom that you seem stressed. Do you also believe Madison? I asked directly. I'm not saying that. I just think, if you had done something wrong, admit it and apologize, and everything will smooth over. I gave a dry laugh. So, no evidence needed, just one person's word is enough to convict me? Ryan was silent. I hung up. I did not cry. I was cold. Cold deep in my bones. Not because I had lost my job, but because I had lost my place in my own family. I opened my laptop. My hands still shook, but I typed decisively. I updated my resume, removed the line "currently at Sterling and Grant," and replaced it with "seeking new opportunities." No, I didn't do it because I needed a job immediately. I did it to reclaim control. I would not sit quietly while Madison manipulated me again. My sister thought she had taken me down with a single knife during the party. But that moment opened something my whole family could not have expected. I was no longer the Eliza who could be pushed around and remain silent. For the sake of family honor, I had awakened, and I would make each of them look at themselves, one by one. I drove to my parents' house the next morning. The sky was gray, matching my mood. The familiar road into the quiet subdivision where I grew up felt suddenly strange. My father's SUV was still parked in the garage, and the banner, "Hall Family Congratulates Madison on her first exhibit," still hung on the porch, even though that exhibit had been a month ago. I walked in without knocking. The smell of waffles baking in the kitchen made my heart sink. When I was little, Mom baked that when I did well on tests. But the atmosphere today was not warm. My mother, Helen, stood at the breakfast table setting plates. My father, Richard, read the newspaper with his glasses down on his nose. Both turned when they heard the door. "Eliza?" Mom frowned. "Why didn't you call first?" "I need to talk," I said, setting my bag down. I looked at them, expecting at least one understanding glance. There was none, only a guarded expression as my father folded his paper. "Madison told me everything," Mom said, voice not accusing but full of implication. "About last night at the company party, you've embarrassed the family." I stood still. 1,000 ways to begin, to explain, to defend ran through my mind. But the first thing I said was simple. I didn't do anything wrong. Richard folded his arms and looked at me over his reading glasses. "So what is right in this situation, Eliza? Accused in front of hundreds? Then suspended on the spot? Do you think people invent things out of nowhere?" "No one makes things up," I answered slowly. "Madison called the company, said she was family, and made it all up. She thought it was a prank." Mom slammed a plate down. "A prank? Eliza, what are you saying? Your sister was only worried about you. She said she tried to warn us that you were working too hard and might be collapsing, mentally. Who would want to hurt you?" I choked. "You're saying Madison had legitimate reasons to call my company and accuse me of theft and addiction?" Helen did not answer immediately. My father spoke up. "Maybe you should take some time off. Reassess life priorities. Opportunities don't come around forever. Maybe you should make room for your sister. She's doing well in the arts." I froze. Those words landed like an unassailable verdict. I waited for them to be withdrawn, but they were not. "Mom used to say I was her pride," I said softly. "I'm the only one in the house with a master's in finance. I worked without rest to support the family. When Ryan lost his job, I paid his rent. When Madison dropped out, I took her to counseling, looked for help, even lent money to open her first gallery. Yet one phone call from her and you believe I'm an addict and a thief?" Helen blinked. Her eyes shone with water, but she did not move toward me. You're responsible, Eliza. But you're also cold, rigid. Madison, she has fire. She has feeling. She's fragile. Maybe you two need to learn to understand each other, not hurt one another. I turned to Ryan, who sat by the fireplace flipping a magazine. And you? What do you think? Ryan looked up, avoiding my eyes. I don't know what really happened. I wasn't there. Maybe both of you should take a step back. You're too harsh, and Madison's impulsive. Both need to. No, I cut him off. This is not both sides. This is one person destroying another's career and the family defending her because she's young. No one answered. The silence in the room made me feel more alien than ever. I realized this was not a home that would protect me when betrayed. It was a place where one misstep by one person could bring the whole family against you. I will not apologize for something I did not do, I said, enunciating each word. And I will not forgive this silence. I came here because I thought at least someone would believe me. I guess I was wrong. I bent to pick up my bag. Helen called after me, voice softer. Eliza. Wait. I stood at the threshold, my hand on the cold doorknob. I don't want fake hugs. I don't want half-hearted reassurances. I want someone brave enough to say what Madison did was wrong. But I guess I'll have to say that for myself. I walked out and closed the door so gently it made no sound. But inside, something snapped. On the drive home, I did not turn on the radio or call anyone. My hands rested on the wheel. My chest felt hollow. I used to think no matter what, family would stand by me. Now I saw that sometimes the ones closest to you are the ones who push you deepest down. I spent the following week doing something I had never imagined doing to my family. I retraced every breadcrumb, every message, every question mark in my memory. I barely slept. Whenever I closed my eyes, the image of Madison under the stage, her lip curling into that smile, replayed like a long scar. I started with my phone. I went through call logs and messages. Nothing obvious at first, but a message from Madison 2 weeks earlier made me pause. She'd written, "You seem tired. I'm serious, take a break. Don't let your boss see you like that." I had brushed it off as concern then. Not now. I moved on to email. In the spam folder, there was a suspicious message from a strange address. Something like, Maddie Art with the subject, urgent. Employee misconduct report. Inside was a PDF, accusing Eliza Hall of stimulant use at work, embezzling hosting budgets, and lacking transparency in financial reports. The numbers looked convincing at first glance, but I immediately spotted a few inconsistencies. I saved that file into a separate folder named Dark Corner. Then I logged back into the company's old data management system. Fortunately, my account had not been fully revoked. I still had temporary access while the investigation was ongoing. I found the timesheets and meeting schedules, and cross-checked them against the days I was accused of being abnormal at work. The results were completely nonsensical. On the day I was alleged to have attended a meeting while under the influence, I was leading a client tour of the project in Chicago, with partner signatures to confirm. I also saved a scanned copy of that meeting report. Then I paused at another suspicious point. The complaint email had been sent from a familiar IP address. I used address tracing software and almost dropped the coffee cup in my hand. That IP address matched the Wi-Fi network at my parents' home in Maplewood. I sat frozen. My hand tightened around the cup. The ceramic made a faint noise. It was no longer just suspicion. Now I had evidence. Madison had sat in my parents' living room, connected to their Wi-Fi, and sent the anonymous complaint to my company. She had painstakingly prepared fake files, using language designed to sound genuinely concerned about my mental instability. It was methodical, deliberate, and worse, everyone at home probably knew. Maybe not from the start, but at least later, when Madison told her version of events. I opened a new tab and accessed the company security camera recordings from internal meetings. At the meeting cited as showing odd behavior, I was completely composed, clearly the presenter. I saved the footage, extracted the relevant clips, and attached them to a new folder, this time named Justice. I did not send anything. I did not call a lawyer. I did not post a rebuttal. Not because I wanted to be passive, but because I understood Madison would not stop there. She is the kind of person who thinks she can hide things. I am different. I do not confront by shouting louder. I work quietly, as I always have. I wrote everything down in my notebook, with timestamps. Which day something was sent, who said what to whom, what I received from the company, who I met, what I witnessed. Those meticulous notes were not to put anyone in jail. They were so I would not forget. I had tried to forget Madison's pranks since high school, like when she hid my presentation and found it at the last minute to share a grade. I used to tell myself, she's just immature. Now I would not allow myself that excuse. Something inside me was shifting. Not mere anger, but a clear realization that if I did not stand up for myself, no one would. One late night, I received an email from Human Resources requesting supporting evidence. I did not hesitate. I created a detailed presentation, attached every video file, the timesheets, partner confirmations, and finally the IP information of the sender of the anonymous complaint. I did not name Madison. I simply wrote, "This sender accessed the network at my family home at a time when I was not present there. I request the company verify this. Objectively." The next morning, I got a message from a former colleague, Sarah, who had worked with me for 3 years. "Eliza, are you okay? I heard your sister contacted the company's communications office. I didn't expect it to go this far." I typed back simply, "Thank you, I'm fine. And I'm doing what needs to be done." Sarah sent a heart. I smiled slightly. In a gray picture, a few small bright spots still appeared. That afternoon, I updated my LinkedIn profile. I removed the specific title. I wrote, "Finance professional seeking a fair, transparent work environment." I added a short line. "When someone pushes you off a ladder, build a new ladder that's stronger." I left the status public, not for Madison to see, but so those who doubted me would know I was still here, and I would not bow my head. I cleared my work corner in the apartment, packed old company papers into a separate box. Then I put it into storage, not throwing it away. Some things don't need to be seen every day, but must be kept to remind me of what I walked through. I printed all the evidence and clipped it into a file, not to send to court, at least not yet, but to keep it as a mirror, to remind me of the limits of silence, and to remind me of what I was about to do next, not revenge, but to reclaim the position I deserved with composure, determination, and without shouting to make someone listen. About a week after I submitted my response to Human Resources, while everything still hung like a taut wire waiting for someone to pull it, I received a call from an unknown number. The screen said, "New York, NY. I almost didn't pick up, thinking it was a reporter chasing a sensational story. But when the man's voice came through deep, clear, and steady, I froze. "Eliza Hall? Yes, that's me. I'm Daniel Ford. Do you remember me? We worked together on the Bexley Bank partnership last year. I handled strategy then." I remembered, immediately. Daniel was the kind of person who spoke little in meetings, but when he did, everyone listened. He was the sort no one underestimated. "I remember you," I replied. "Good. Because I need someone like you." I was quiet for a few seconds. Daniel seemed to understand my mood and spoke on. "I heard about the incident with Sterling and Grant. In finance, the industry is not so big that something like this doesn't reach others. But I also know who can actually do the work, and who only creates surface noise. If you're willing, I'd like to meet to discuss an opportunity at Valiant Capital." Valiant Capital, one of the fastest-growing investment firms in the Northeast. I had followed them in industry notes, impressed by how they managed complex client portfolios while maintaining a strong reputation. I was a bit surprised. "You trust me, despite the rumors?" "No, I don't trust rumors. I trust results." The meeting was arranged for the next afternoon at Reapel, Valiant's office on the 37th floor of a glass tower in Manhattan's financial district. Daniel was waiting when I arrived. Shirt sleeves rolled, no tie, eyes direct but not probing. "You're on time. I like that," he said and invited me to sit. The conversation started gently, revolving around the old project we both had worked on. Gradually, he asked more directly, "If you were chosen for a senior management role here, overseeing the strategy investment team, what would you want to prove first?" I did not hedge. "I want to prove that being pushed out of Sterling does not erase my capability or my true value, and I want to turn what I learned from that fall into an advantage for any team I lead. Daniel nodded. Do you have client portfolios with you? I opened my case and handed him summaries of the accounts I had managed. Growth rates, client satisfaction, periodic evaluations, notes from client meetings. He flipped through the pages without comment, nodding occasionally. When he closed the folder, his look had changed sharper, but with a hint of respect. Very thorough. But one last question, he said. Why haven't you sued Sterling? You have evidence. You have cause. I looked at him and smiled. Because I think success is the best revenge. I don't need a judgment to prove who's wrong when they will recognize it through what I'm about to accomplish. Daniel leaned back, arms folded, looking satisfied. The strategic manager role is yours, if you want it. Base salary, double your old pay, plus quarterly bonuses. But more importantly, no one here will judge you by someone else's word. I was silent for several seconds. My throat was dry, not from anxiety, but from the feeling of being believed when it seemed no one else would. Thank you, I said, voice small but steady. I accept. Daniel stood and extended his hand. Good, you start next Monday. And Eliza. I stopped, turned. Welcome to a place where every fall is considered an asset. That afternoon, I walked out of the glass building with late sunlight warming my hair, as if winter had receded. I looked up at the sky between the jagged skyline, not searching for optimism but to mark the moment. I had returned, not by pity, but by real capability. On the way home, I didn't call anyone or post anything. I wanted to keep this moment to myself for a few hours. I wanted to sit with the feeling of being chosen for my own value, not for connections or appearances. That night, I opened a new file on my computer titled Rebuild. I began planning my first week at Valiant, not only how to lead a new team, but how to prove to myself that I would no longer let others tell my story. From that moment, I knew I had rewritten a chapter of my life by my own hands that had once been shoved off the stage, now returning with a portfolio and an unshakable resolve. Less than 3 days after I signed with Valiant Capital, my voicemail started filling up fast. The first message came on Wednesday morning, just as I sat in a cafe near the new office, sipping a cappuccino and reviewing the orientation week plan. Madison's voice came through my earphones, syrupy fake to the point I nearly dropped my cup. Hey sis, heard you got a new job. Congrats. I'm really happy for you. Mom says you're working at a well-known investment firm. So, I'm planning to expand the gallery into a new exhibition space in Brooklyn. It's a great location, you should see it. They need a deposit this week and I can't quite pull it together. Could you help me out? I'll send the detailed plan by email. Love you. I did not reply. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Ryan. Hey, I've got a little favor. That loan from the bank? I'm behind on payments. They're threatening to sue, and I'm about to take on a new project I can't risk with a bad credit score. Just $3,000. Can you help? I promise to pay you back. I still did not respond. That afternoon, my mother called. I didn't pick up, but her voicemail played as if she were standing right next to me. Eliza, your father and I are so glad you've pulled through. Everything's behind you now, right? We're family. Also, your father wants to fix up the Vermont cottage. The roof leaks and the windows are old. Remember when we used to spend summers there? Now with a grandchild, it'd be nice to have a place to gather. If you could contribute, it would be wonderful. Just $20,000. Not much. I turned off the screen, set the phone down, and leaned back. The server brought toast, but I didn't eat. I watched people pass outside the window, wondering how many of them carried the same nameless quiet. I felt like someone stepping toward your heart with fingernails instead of hands. I wasn't surprised. All 3 of them messaged me for money. I wasn't hurt anymore. What stopped me for a long time was how they implicitly agreed that my success was a resource they had a right to access. That night I went home, opened my laptop, and checked my email. 3 new messages, no surprise. Madison had attached photos of an empty space with the subject in all caps, no second chances, sis. Ryan attached the loan contract, the current outstanding amount, and a note. I'm only asking you. My mother sent renderings of the renovated cottage and a short line. Don't you remember you used to love this house as a child? I read each message from start to finish. Then I did not reply. I smiled and closed the laptop. The next day, while entering the office, the phone rang again. It was my mother. I let it ring. The call cut off and a text appeared. "Eliza, did you see the email? Your father and I will make the deposit next week." I did not respond. 10 minutes later, Ryan texted, "Did you get my email? If it's too much, just say so, don't stay silent." Then, "Madison, I see you're online. Read my mail yet? Hurry or someone else will take the space." At lunch, while I reviewed the client portfolio that Daniel's old team had been handling, the phone lit up once more. This time it was the landline at my parents' house. I calmly silenced it and put the phone in the drawer. I needed my mind clear. Not to cope, but to prepare for what I knew would come. 7 p.m. I left the office. It was drizzling. Drops splashed on my dark knit coat. Back home, I turned on the lights, hung my coat, and went to the kitchen. The soup I had made the day before was still there. I reheated it, poured a glass of red wine, and sat at the table with the batch of recruitment files I would review for HR the next day. Just as I took a sip of wine, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Very short. "Dad doesn't want to mention money, but your mother and I are upset that you keep silent. The house is a big matter. Hope you understand." I stood, took out the old notebook, opened to the first page where I had once written, "Write everything down, don't let anyone blur your memory." I began to record. Date, time, who sent what, the content, the tone. Not for revenge, but to remember. To remember that they treated my success like a shared asset, but never treated the hurt I received as a real loss. I didn't write any reply. I wrote for myself. That night, before going to sleep, I logged into my bank account. Not to check the balance, but to remind myself that I had gotten here by my own effort. No borrowing from anyone. No trading innocence. No compromising by letting kindness be exploited. I turned off the phone, placed it face down. And in the sleep that night, after many weeks, I didn't dream of Madison's eyes under the stage lights. I dreamed of a tree-lined road, wide and open, where I walked alone with empty hands, carrying nothing heavy. Just walking. But my heart felt very light. It took me 3 consecutive nights to finish writing those letters, not because I hesitated, nor because I didn't know where to start, but because I wanted each sentence to be sharp, each cited passage clear, and every attached piece of evidence to make the recipient unable to deny anything. I reopened the old notebook where I had chronicled things since college. Each page held a hidden pain kept under the name family, each remark mocked as too sensitive, each time I chose silence to avoid trouble. I would not live like that anymore. From now on, truth would be the only language I used with them. The first letter went to Madison. I attached a copy of the 2020 bank records showing she used my name to open an ancillary credit account with mail sent to my parents' house. I had no idea until I was denied a credit card to buy a car last year, and it took 6 months to clear that from my record. In the letter, I listed the date Madison made those transactions, the time I was on a business trip in San Diego, with proof, plane tickets, partner meeting schedules, and hotel invoices. I also included photos of the items she bought under my name, not necessities or work-related, but a string of designer handbags, perfumes, and even an imported speaker set she bragged about on social media the very day the account exceeded its limit. "Madison," I wrote in the letter, "I have forgiven many things you did, but that does not mean I have forgotten. It certainly does not mean you have the right to repeat them. Creativity cannot be built on deceit. And forgiveness is not an unlimited resource." I signed my name, clipped the letter with a printed and certified bank transaction statement, and sealed it in a dark brown envelope. The second letter went to Ryan. I remember clearly when he said that his daughter Ella's school fund was adequately supported by their parents. I believed him, so I transferred extra money to help since she was about to start at a private middle school. But less than a month later, I discovered the account that received the money had transferred funds to an online gambling site hosted in New Jersey. I said nothing then. I quietly noted the transactions, saved the entire transfer history, cross-checked the recipient names and even the transaction times, which matched perfectly the hours he had boasted he was in meetings. I printed all that documentation. In the letter, I didn't accuse him. I only wrote, "Ryan, I used to idolize you. When we were little, you were the first to teach me how to read financial news, how to write scholarship applications, how to stand up when others belittled me. But what you are doing now is no longer a mistake. It is a betrayal. I didn't demand restitution. I didn't threaten to sue. I simply wrote, I hope you look at Ella and see the need to change, not to keep covering things up. The third letter went to Richard, the man I once thought was the model of calm and balance. I attached an extract from the deed for the Vermont house the cottage he had just asked me to help repair. What stunned me was discovering the house had been mortgaged 3 years earlier to pull out a personal loan for an investment. That investment was a lakeside resort real estate project he had funded with an old friend, which has now gone bankrupt and had its assets frozen. I used to trust that Dad would never hide financial matters from me, at least because I work in the field. I was wrong. In the letter I wrote, Dad, I am not angry because you failed. I am hurt that you hid it from me, then turned to ask me for help as if I owed the family part of that responsibility. Love cannot come with conditions, nor can it be based on pretending not to see. I kept a respectful tone throughout, because I still remember his eyes as he taught me to spell, and his hand steadying mine when I wrote a wrong stroke. But truth had to be spoken, like a cold rain to wash away the dust that had accumulated on the family wall that once seemed solid. And finally, I wrote to my mother Helen, the hardest letter, the one that kept me awake the most nights. I opened the old college mail file where an email from the finance office stated that a summer tuition subsidy in 2008 was withdrawn because the scholarship did not cover everything. I had to borrow to finish that course. At the time, Mom said the household budget was tight and priority had to go to Madison, who had just entered high school. Last year, by chance, I saw Mom's printed credit report while she compared credit cards, and I discovered that at the same time she had purchased a diamond jewelry set worth $12,000. In the letter I wrote, Mom, I told my friends you were a thrifty, resilient, self-sacrificing woman, but I cannot forget having to work extra hours at the library while studying while you wore a necklace worth an entire semester's tuition. I wrote nothing further. I left the closing blank and just signed my name, giving her the choice whether to respond. All 4 letters were placed in sturdy envelopes with the recipients' names clearly printed. The next morning, I went to the post office, laid them on the counter, handed them to the clerk and said softly, Send certified. Require signature upon delivery. The clerk looked up at me. I only smiled. No explanation needed. I walked out into the midday sun and felt a light breeze move a few strands of hair from the bun at the nape of my neck. I didn't look back at the post office behind me. I didn't need to. I just kept walking, as if I had set down a smoldering ember I had held silently for years, ready to let it flare, not to burn anyone, but to illuminate every face that had looked down while I raised mine. That morning I was at my desk at Valiant, preparing the week's strategy meeting, when my phone started to ring nonstop. 3 missed calls from Madison, 4 texts from Mom, a landline call from my parents' house. Ryan texted too, short and blunt. You're ruthless. I placed the phone face down and continued outlining a plan to approach new potential clients in the Northwest. When the meeting ended, I stepped into the hallway to get a cup of tea. Daniel saw me at the coffee station and glanced at the lit screen of my phone. Family? He asked softly. I nodded, no need to explain. He simply smiled, nodded as if he understood everything, then walked away. I arrived home at 7 p.m., not yet having taken off my coat when the doorbell began ringing repeatedly. I didn't need to check the peephole to know who it was. When I opened the door, Madison practically barged in, clutching a messy stack of papers, clearly the letters I had sent, along with copies of the documents. Behind her, my mother's face was tight, lips trembling. Ryan stood a bit back, leaning against the hallway wall like an outsider. My father wasn't there, but the look in my mother's eyes told me enough about what had happened. What were you thinking? Madison shouted. You sent this to everyone in the family? Do you mean to show me up like that? I tilted my head and stepped aside, not inviting but not stopping her. If you want to talk, come in, but don't shout in the hallway. Madison stormed into the living room and threw the pile of papers onto the table like she was tossing proof of a crime. My mother entered slowly, saying nothing. Ryan came last, eyes not daring to meet mine. I said it was a misunderstanding, Madison continued, voice breaking. You think you're so great? You think you have the right to expose everything? This is family, not a court. I poured a glass of water, handed it to Mom, then sat down opposite. Madison, what I sent is true. I neither added nor subtracted. I didn't comment. I simply recorded the evidence and let each person read it. Dad was hospitalized this morning, my mother said, her voice hoarse. His blood pressure spiked. Can you imagine? He received the letter at breakfast. Reading the part about the mortgage, he choked and collapsed right at the table. I was silent for a few seconds. He is still my father, but I kept my composure. I'm sorry about his health. But I am not the cause. What I wrote is not new. It just had never been named. Ryan then spoke up. Why dig everything up? Why not let it go? Because letting it go means you keep taking. It means you keep asking for money, keep treating me as an endless support. It means continuing to see my success as a communal wallet while never looking at what you've done to me. Madison lunged forward. Don't play the victim. I've struggled too. I've tried hard. But you always act superior, always play the competent sister who endures. Do you know what it feels like to be compared like that? I looked straight into her eyes. I never compared. I just did my work. The pressure you feel is because you chose to compete with me, not because I asked you to. Madison was silent for a few seconds, then sobbed. My mother pulled a tissue and handed it to her youngest daughter without looking at me. I turned to my mother. You called me responsible, the one who must sacrifice, but you never asked if I was tired. You told me I handled things better, so I had to carry the weight. My silence for so long wasn't agreement. It was hope that people would understand. They didn't. They're just used to me not refusing. My mother closed her eyes, hands clenched together. Ryan reached for the file I had attached to the letters, flipped a few pages, and threw it down. This is private. You had no right to keep these things, much less send them out. I stood, pulled from the drawer an old transaction file, the proof that Ryan had used Ella's education funds to load money into a betting account. Don't you remember that day? You called me asking for extra money because she needed a new uniform. At the same time, your account transferred more than $1,000 to a gambling platform. I didn't save this to shame you. I saved it so I wouldn't trust anyone unconditionally again. Ryan took a step back, mouth opening as if to speak, then closing. Madison wept and gripped our mother's hand. Mom, she's ruining everything, she wailed. I bent forward, gathered all the papers, organized them neatly into separate files, and placed them in front of each person. No one here is being defamed. Each person needs to look at what they assumed was normal. And if people still feel hurt by being asked to face that, perhaps I've been the only one hurt all along and no one noticed. Madison rose, tears streaming. You're not a saint, Eliza. Stop playing the righteous role. I walked to the door and opened it. The hallway light spilled into the apartment. I never was a saint. I'm not acting. I simply refuse to be the only one who keeps quiet. No one said anything. My mother left first without looking at me. Ryan followed, silently. Madison turned back once, red-eyed but still resentful. She said nothing, only patted at her face with another tissue and walked away. Her heels clicked on the wooden hallway floor like echoes of the years people decided how much I deserved to be loved. I closed the door and leaned my back against the cold wood. The room still smelled of printed paper and tears. But I didn't turn on the lights or the radio. I left it like that because, for the first time in my life, that silence was the clearest voice I had ever had. The next morning, my phone didn't ring. The inbox was strangely quiet, as if after the chaotic night someone had erased every remaining sound from my family. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the trees down the street begin to turn yellow. My chest didn't feel lighter, but it wasn't as heavy. I spent most of the morning working, replying to emails from legal approving documents for the upcoming fundraising round. Daniel texted one short line. Meeting at 3 p.m. Need to discuss something privately. I replied. Understood, and returned to numbers, reports, and analysis. Around 11:30 a.m. The doorbell rang again. I looked through the hallway camera. It was Ryan. He stood there alone, hands in his pockets, his face worn. I thought for a few seconds, then opened the door. You didn't bring anyone? I asked, unable to hide a touch of irony. Ryan didn't smile. No, I just wanted to talk to you. May I come in? I nodded and stepped aside. He entered, his eyes scanning the living room, where a few traces of the previous night remained: a paper fallen by the chair, an unwashed glass on the table. I didn't offer him a seat. Ryan found a spot on the arm of the sofa and folded his hands as if about to pray. I didn't sleep at all last night, he began. Because of what you said, and what I did. I crossed my arms, leaning against the back of the chair across from him, silent. There's something you need to know. Actually, I should have said it a long time ago. Ryan lifted his head, his gaze no longer avoided mine. In March, when Madison said she had a way to get you fired, I thought it was just a threat. But then, she brought the whole plan. She had drafted everything: the anonymous email, seemingly plausible details, the edited figures. She only needed someone to confirm it, to give the impression of a concerned family member. And I was the only one who could do that. My chest went cold, as if a gust of icy air had hit me straight in the ribs. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. Madison promised to share part of the commission if it succeeded. You would be pushed out, and she could approach partners in your place. There were people in the art industry willing to invest in her media project. She said that if I could use your company contacts to make introductions, she would secure the first sponsor. I still didn't speak, but my hands clenched, my nails dug into my palms until it hurt. I agreed, because the bank was pressing me. The last startup loan failed, debts piled up, my credit score was about to drop to a point where I couldn't borrow anymore. I thought, just confirm a few things. Just lend Madison my name. But I didn't think. I cut him off. My voice dry. You didn't think it would cost me my job? You didn't think it would smear my reputation? Or that after all the times I pulled you out of chaos, you would repay me by kicking me out of the company? Ryan bowed his head and covered his face with both hands. I regret it. But I didn't have the courage to stop when the chance came. I thought you would manage. You're capable. You're strong. I let out a small, bitter laugh, a sound halfway between disbelief and pain. You say that like it's a compliment, as if my strength made you comfortable enough to betray me. He was silent. In the small room, only the soft hiss of the heater and the pale light through the curtains remained. Did Mom know? I asked. Ryan slowly nodded. After she received the letter, she suspected. Then Madison confessed. Dad was in the hospital at the time. When he found out, he said nothing. He just closed his eyes and turned toward the wall. Mom was silent all day, not uttering a word. She didn't blame Madison. But she told me I should tell you myself. Not for honor, but for conscience. I turned my face away. Something inside me screamed not exactly pain, more like being gutted, realizing the people I had sacrificed for had combined to remove me from my own life. I came here, Ryan continued, not hoping you'll forgive me. I just want you to know the truth. And if you need any evidence, any testimony, I will provide it. So you can clear your name. So you can get back what you deserve. I sat down opposite him, staring into his eyes. I don't need you to rescue me. I don't need anyone to rescue me anymore. What I need is for no one to stand in my way. Ryan nodded slightly. He stood up, took a small envelope from his pocket and set it on the table. This is the full email exchange between me and Madison about that, including the plan she sent. I don't keep copies anymore. I didn't touch the envelope. I only looked at him. And then what? I asked. You plan to go back and keep being the dutiful son, the good father, the reliable brother, as if nothing ever happened? He looked at me for a long time, then shook his head. No. I don't know who I am anymore. But if there's a chance to start over, I want it not built on trampling others. I stood and walked to the door. I opened it. Ryan didn't ask anything more. He stepped outside silently. When he glanced back, I was still standing there saying nothing, not closing the door right away. We only looked at each other. We were no longer simply siblings, nor were we strangers. We were two people standing on ground that had been plowed up, unsure what to sow before the next season. I closed the door, picked up the envelope, and didn't open it immediately. I put it on the table, then went into the kitchen. I needed to boil water, to wash my hands, to breathe. Because, whatever else, The truth had been exposed. And the scariest thing was not the betrayal. It was the feeling that it did not surprise me. Madison disappeared from town the next afternoon. I received a message from a former colleague with a link to a live stream that was spreading fast online. In the shaky frame, Madison sat in a hotel room in Los Angeles. Barefaced, mascara smudged at the corners of her eyes. Her voice trembled through sobs and choked breaks. My sister ruined my life. She dragged everything out like I'm a monster, while I just wanted to be acknowledged. Just once. She has it all, and I have to struggle on my own. And now, even the only chance to start over, she's taking that away too. I sat quietly in my office while the video ended. Below the clip, comments divided into camps. Half blamed her for weakness, half called me cruel. I didn't react. I didn't need anyone to side with me. I just sat, watching Madison's shaking face on the screen, and for a brief second I saw that she no longer looked like an enemy. She was a girl adrift among the wrong choices she had made. Around the same time, Ryan received a summons from the bank. I didn't ask for details. I only knew he had to work with a lawyer and enroll in a problem gambling support program at the community counseling center in the next town. He called me, asking nothing more than to inform me. His voice was hoarse but curiously calm. "I've started writing therapy journals," he said. For the first time, I find myself writing without denying anything, just looking straight at the truth. I answered briefly, "Hold on to it. It will be the anchor that keeps you from drifting back." That night I was washing dishes when the doorbell rang. On the porch, my mother stood motionless in a thick beige sweater, red-eyed, holding a bag of homemade cookies. She said nothing when I opened the door. No invitation needed. She stepped in and sat at the kitchen table like she had for decades in the old house. I set a glass of water in front of her. She bowed her head, hands on her knees, fingers clenched, unable to meet my eyes. "Do you hate me?" she asked, her voice low, coming from the deepest part of her guilt. I pulled a chair and sat across from her. "I don't need to hate. I've been so used to enduring that there's no room left for hate inside me." She looked up, tears streamed down her cheeks. I was wrong. I didn't see it. I thought spoiling the two of them was because they were weaker, needed me more. And you were too strong, so I assumed you wouldn't break. I didn't cry. I only looked at her. A woman who had spent a lifetime tending the family, yet left those who most needed fairness to find their own footing. "Can you forgive me?" she whispered. I was silent for a long time. "You don't have to ask for forgiveness now, but you need to understand this. The strength you saw in me was not a pillar. It was armor. Each time you ignored things, I had to put on another layer. Now I can't feel warmth from anyone." She cried, wordless. She opened the cookie bag and pushed it toward me. "When you were sick as a child, I always baked ginger cookies, remember?" I nodded. "I baked them. But I never ate them with you." I was busy soothing Madison's crying in her room. I pressed my lip lightly against the table. Some memories thought long buried can come alive with a single sentence, full of color, sound, and the original sting of loneliness. "I'm not asking you to go back to rescuing everyone. I only hope now, if you sit in the kitchen, someone will sit opposite you and eat with you." This time I didn't reply. I took a cookie, bit a small piece, and poured more water for her. We sat together, saying nothing, offering no excuses, no wiping away each other's tears. Just presence calm, without demand. A few days later, I heard that Richard had agreed to sell the Vermont cottage. He didn't call directly, but he sent a handwritten letter, his handwriting slightly shaking but steady. "Eliza, I was too confident in my decisions. I trusted controls so much, I forgot that family isn't a financial plan where a single steady hand prevents collapse. You've held us together for a long time, but I never saw it. Now I do. I will not interfere with your choices anymore. From now on, you have the right to set your own boundaries. I will not touch them." I held the letter and looked out the window where late autumn sunlight touched the glass. Outside, the leaves fell slowly in the wind, not in chaos. Each one dropped at the right moment, with nobody forcing it. I understood that although things couldn't go back to how they were, at least cracks had been named and faced. No more muffled silence, no more hugs hiding needles, no more polite nods pretending to understand. I folded the letter and set it on the table next to my steaming cup of tea. A snippet of classical music played on the radio. I sat and listened, letting myself be soothed not because someone apologized, but because I had stopped tolerating what I didn't deserve. 1 year later, on an early March morning, I walked into a glass high-rise downtown with a coffee in my hand and soft sunlight pouring through the large windows straight into the elegant lobby. The plaque on the black granite wall read, Grayson Partners Strategic Development and Investment Branch. I was no longer the suspended employee slandered by false accusations. Now I was a senior strategic partner personally invited by Daniel Grayson, the founder, after the old allegations were fully cleared and the person who made them was held accountable. I did not return to my old firm. Instead, I agreed to co-lead the new unit Daniel set up, focused on building an independent client network for green investment projects. I had full authority over projects, teams, partners, and, most importantly, an unmistakable voice in every executive meeting. On my desk now sat not just a work phone but a box of business cards with my title printed clearly. Senior Strategic Partner Eliza Hall. Clients no longer called asking, "Who are you an assistant to?" They said, "We need to meet with you, Eliza." In a midweek internal meeting, my executive assistant mentioned there was a new applicant for an administrative trainee position. "She wrote in her cover letter that she really wants to learn from you," the assistant said hesitantly. "Her name is Madison Hall." I lifted my head slightly and was quiet for a few seconds. Then I set my pen down and said, "Schedule her an interview. But route the file to legal first, to vet the contract terms." Madison arrived on time, wearing a worn ash-gray dress, her hair tied in a loose bun at the nape. Her makeup was light but couldn't hide the dark exhaustion under her eyes. She bowed her head when she came in, no arrogance, no challenging look. "I know you have no reason to trust me," she said, voice hoarse and trembling, "but I need a job. I really need a place to start over." I kept my gaze steady. "Madison, this isn't the place to start over in the way you used to imagine. Here, everyone starts from the beginning, including you. You'll have no private office, no privileges. Your contract will be the strictest type. Any misconduct, even minor, is grounds for immediate termination. Do you agree?" She nodded. "I agree." I signed the corner of the application and passed it to HR. The door closed behind Madison as she left. I stayed seated. I felt neither anger nor easy forgiveness. Just a clear awareness that I held the decision power, and that power was not for revenge, but to reset the rules. Ryan, after 12 months of mandatory treatment and 6 months of ongoing therapy, was officially declared to have completed his rehabilitation program. He moved to work for a mid-size engineering firm in a lower-level but steady position. He didn't keep in frequent contact, but each month he sent a short letter updating me on his progress. In a recent one, he wrote, "I haven't done anything grand, but each morning I make my own coffee without thinking about placing a bet. Maybe for me, that's enough." I kept those letters in a private drawer, unread, but not ignored. By December, when the air turned cold and Christmas lights began twinkling on balconies, I received an invitation to dinner from my mother. Not a family meeting like, before no fundraising agenda, no staged gratitude. Just, "Are you free for dinner with the family on Friday? I'm grilling and making apple pie." I said yes. The old suburban house had been repainted, the roof redone, but it still had the small backyard and the weathered wooden table and chairs. When I arrived, Madison was setting the table. Ryan manned the grill. My father, thinner after his health scare, looked smaller but his eyes were less sharp. My mother sliced apple pie, apron on, hands moving with the same practiced ease. We ate under soft yellow lights. No one mentioned money, no one asked if I could help out, and there was no awkwardness. Conversation turned to food, old memories, and a few bits of news. When I stood to wash dishes, Madison murmured, "Let me help." I nodded. We stood shoulder to shoulder in the kitchen, two sisters, not like the years of distance, but like two people who knew they had hurt one another, and were now trying to live beside each other without inflicting new wounds. "I don't know when I'll ever regain everyone's trust," she whispered. I answered, "Trust isn't what you need to get back. You just need to make sure you don't lose anything else." As I left their house, I glanced around the table again. Nothing flashy, no one transformed into someone else. The strange thing was, I no longer felt cast out as an outsider. I didn't have to smile to be accepted, nor scrub to be acknowledged. I sat squarely in my place, a grown, independent person who controlled what happened around her. On the drive home, I rolled down the window and let the night wind blow through my hair. A year isn't long, but it's enough for everything to flip. The people who once broke me had to learn to walk on their own. As for me, I had stepped out of my past without needing anyone to lead me, and I didn't turn back to seek approval from those who had abandoned me. I wouldn't call it forgiveness, nor would I call it revenge. I called it rebirth, gentle, quiet, but as clear as the first breath of day. My story may have closed one old circle here, but I still believe many out there face similar turns. What we call family can sometimes wound us most deeply. Yet from that pain, if we're steady enough, we can rise and rewrite our own fate. I don't claim to have won. I simply chose not to lose again. Not to yield to unreasonable demands. Not to repeat the loop of silence and suffering. And oddly, when I stopped trying to be the obedient child, the dutiful sister, the one who always gave, those who had taken me for granted, began to look at themselves. If you've experienced something like this betrayal within the family, silence from loved ones, loneliness at the dinner table you thought of as home, I want to hear your story. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your words might warm someone else who feels alone. And if stories like this touch something in you, don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss new journeys, real lives, lessons about human nature, how we heal ourselves, or sometimes simply learning to live peacefully, even when family isn't perfect.